Hey, good morning. Hey, listen, we just got a week of our life back because we don't have to go to court next week. So we're going to do something that we've been trying to get done, which was a playlist on Purim, P-U-R-I-M. Does anybody know what Purim is? It's a holiday. Okay, so this is a collection. I'm just going to be reading right from my website, which is where science meets religion.blogspot.com. And if you keep scrolling down on the side, you're going to see a list of holidays, and Purim is in there. It's a wonderful story about a queen who replaces another queen, and a murder plot, and a foiled murder plot, and a turning of the tables where the Jews gained control over their enemies who were treacherous. Okay, so I'm just going to read... Alright, I'm just going to read from my website, which is a collection from Esther, but it's not in order. You know, it's a story, but it's not in order. It's really a collection of quotes that you need to know, okay? Esther 9:26. These are the days called Purim, from the word pur, P-U-R, because of all the instructions in this letter, and because of all they had seen and experienced. It's when Esther reclaimed half the kingdom from the king's regime. She reclaimed it for her and her people. She said, "If I die, I die. If I perish, I perish." But the king held out his golden scepter, and he didn't kill her. Esther 9:28. These days should be remembered and observed in every generation by every family and in every province and every city. And these days of Purim shall never fail to be celebrated by the Jews, nor should the memory of these days die out among their descendants. Esther's 9:29. Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew, wrote with all authority to confirm the second letter of Purim. Esther 9:26. Wherefore they called the days Purim, after the name Pur. Therefore, for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them. Esther 2:8. The king's command. This is earlier in the story. An edict had been proclaimed, and many young women were gathered at the citadel of Susa under the care of Haggai. And Esther was taken into the palace and placed under the care of Haggai, the custodian of women. This was like a bachelor-style hunt to find a new queen. You know, the king gathered up all these virgins. Big Than and Teresh were hanged on a tree because they plotted to overthrow the king and assassinate him. Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. It was a Jew who saved the king's life. Haman had pride and was pissed off that Mordecai didn't bow to him. Haman was the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, who was the Jews' enemy, and he was promoted to a seat above all the princes, and he submitted a bill for a holocaust that he himself was going to pay 10,000 of silver to the assassins who flipped it into the king's treasury. The king said to Haman, "Do what seems good." Esther 3:3. The letters were sent by posts, Facebook posts, into all the king's providences to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in the same day, one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to take spoil for them for a prey. The posts went out and were hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. King and Haman sat down to drink. But of course we know, yes, they plotted to kill the Jews, but they were unsuccessful. They ended up dying themselves there. Purim, in that story, you're going to talk about the bling, the gallows, the gambling, the slaughter and the hanging. After all the evil plans for the extermination of the Jews in Persia is frustrated by Esther and Mordecai, King Xerxes, Ahasuerus, grants the Jews permission to wreak revenge. In a grand Old Testament style, the Jews slaughter tens of thousands of their perceived enemies and then whoop it up in a party. After Haman is hanged, Mordecai replaces him as the king's most important servant. Esther is the king's wife. Both Esther and Mordecai are Jews, and together they write a letter to the Jews in all the 127 provinces of Persia, reminding them to annually commemorate this victory on the 14th and 15th day of the month of Adar. That letter became known as the first letter of Purim. And the second was sent out, but not till much later, and it did confirm the first. Esther 3, starting at line 8, Haman said to King Ahasuerus, "There is a certain people that were scattered abroad and dispersed among all the people in all the provinces of the kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all the people. Neither do they keep the king's laws. Therefore, it's not for the king's profit to suffer them, and if it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, and bring it to the king's treasuries." And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And the king said to Haman, "The silver is given to thee, the people also. Do with them what seemeth good to thee." Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded, unto the king's lieutenant, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province, according to the writings thereof, and to every people after their language, in the name of the king Xerxes, as it was written, and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by posts, and to all the king's provinces, to destroy, kill, and cause to perish all the Jews, both young, old, little children, and women, in one day, upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to take spoil. And a copy of this writing is for a commandment to be given in every province, that was published unto all the people, that they should be ready against that day. And the posts went out, being hastened by the king's commandment. The decree was given in Shushan the palace, and the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city was perplexed. And then later, the queen, the daughter of Abihail, wrote with all authority to confirm the second letter of Purim. And the king said to Esther the queen, "The Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in the Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is thy petition? And it shall be granted unto thee. What is your request? And it shall be done." And then Esther said, "If it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews, which are in Shushan, to do tomorrow according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows." And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan. But on the prey they laid not their hands. But the other Jews that were in the king's province gathered together, and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies. and slew their foes, 70 and 5,000. But they laid hands not on the prey. On the 13th day of the same month of Adar, and the 14th day of the same, rested they, and they made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day, and on the 15th day they rested, and they made a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month of Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and sending portions to one another. And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in the provinces of King Xerxes, both near and far, to stabilize this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month of Adar, and the 15th day of the same yearly, as the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, from mourning unto a good day, that they should make days of feasting and joy, and send portions to one another, and give gifts to the poor. And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is lot, to consume them, and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that this wicked device which he devised against the Jews should return upon his own head, and that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they called the days Purim, after the name of Pur. And the Jews ordained and took upon them, upon their seed, upon all such as joined themselves to them, that it should not fail, that they should keep these 2 days according to their writings and according to their appointed times every year, that these days should be remembered and kept through every generation, every family, every province, every city, that these days of Purim shall not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. And Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, wrote with all authority to confirm the second letter of Purim. Okay, let me see. Now, we can probably go on for a while talking about this. Purim, the colors. We know red, white, and blue and black were the colors on the floor as marble when the king was throwing a party. King Ahasuerus, now this is just a recap, King Ahasuerus threw a feast for 7 days in the court. The hangings on the wall were white, green, and blue. On the floor was red, white, and blue, and black. Queen Vashti was having her own party for the women in the royal court, and when the king called for the queen to come and bring the crown royal, but the queen refused, and the king got mad, and his wise men convinced him to divorce her, which clothes her in violence, anyway, and to come not into his presence anymore, and he took away her house and gave it to another lady, and the king was mad, and made a law that, homeowners should rule in their own homes. There was some gambling done in this holiday. That's why celebration is called Purim, because it is the ancient word for casting lots. So, because Mordecai's letter and because of what they had experienced, the word chance is in the Bible. One time, Ecclesiastes 9:11, I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill. But it's time and chance that happeneth to them all. Purim recognizes the change of command. Esther 9, in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same month, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put into execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them. Jews ruled over their haters. The Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Xerxes, to lay hand on anybody who sought their hurt. No man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all the people, and the rulers of the provinces, and the lieutenants, and the deputies, and the officers of the king helped the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai fell on them. Purim talks about the provinces from India to Ethiopia. There's royal drinking wine. This king called in his legal experts, the 7 princes, because he was seeking legal recourse so the women would not be angry. Abihail, that's Esther's mom. Abihail's actually in there 6 times. Son of Abihail's in Numbers. The wife of Abishur was Abihail. I don't know if these are the same people. Could be. It was the 13th day of the 12th month that the Jews got the upper hand over their haters, over those who hated them. That's what Purim's all about. We also remember the divorce, the colors. We remember the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, and he set the royal crown upon her head and made her the queen instead of Vashti. White, green, and linen cords, Esther's 1:6. Now there's a whole study on royal. Maybe we'll make a different video. Be serious, okay?